Once again, good afternoon, and thank you for joining this exciting discussion, Solving for Sustainability, Igniting Change Through Innovation. Please welcome our panelists, Stephanie Benedetto, Chief Executive Officer and co-founder, Queen of Raw; Dr. Bindu Garapaty, Vice President of Talent, Inclusion, and Equity of Impossible Foods; and Sarah Paiji, Chief Executive Officer and co-founder of Blueland.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction. We're really thrilled to be with you today. So the topic of the day, it's solving for sustainability, igniting change through innovation. So it's a big, bold vision and mission that we're tackling. And on our panel today, we're really excited to be talking about incredible innovations by these leaders here on this panel across industries and sectors. My industry touches textiles and circular economy. We're talking about plant-based meats and cleaning products and plastics. So my focus is textiles. And today, more than ever, we're seeing such a massive movement around innovation in textiles and sustainability. People are creating fabrics out of recycled plastic bottles, out of biological sources like milk and coffee and fruit and bacteria, and even going so far as to print fabric on 3D printers out of biodegradable materials, buried in the ground. In 3 months, it's gone zero traces. So incredible innovations and building for a cool future, except textile waste is still a massive problem. Every single year, $120 billion worth of unused fabric just sits in warehouses collecting dust or being burned and sent to landfill. And I really like to say, at that volume, waste isn't just environmentally irresponsible, it's a CFO issue. And this is the problem that my company, Queen of Raw, is here to address. We've built a global marketplace so that brands and retailers and individuals can buy and sell their unused textiles, keep it out of landfill, and obviously turn what would be pollution into profit. And we also have built some software and tools to help these businesses intelligently minimize those waste streams going forward. And I think about it a lot, but why do I do what I do? My family has been in fashion and textiles for over 100 years, and I'm doing this for my children. I want them to have clean water to drink, clothes that aren't toxic to wear, and a planet to live on. And with our solution, we've already saved over 1 billion gallons of water. That's enough clean water for 1.4 million people to drink around the world for 3 years. And I mention that because hopefully what you're hearing on this panel today is that we're all really inspired by seeing people take action and by what you both are doing. It's just incredible. And I'd love it if each of you can introduce yourself and kind of the driving force behind why you do what you do. Let's start with Sarah, you, the co-founder of Blueland, and then we'll take it to Bindu Garapaty, who's the VP of Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Talent at Impossible Foods.
Thanks, Stephanie. Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm co-founder and CEO of Blueland, and we are a refillable cleaning products company on a mission to eliminate single-use plastic packaging. So we sell our products in a refillable system. So they come with a set of beautiful reusable bottles and these innovative tablets about the size of a quarter. And how our products work are instead of like conventional cleaners, which are typically most all water, over 90% water, and you pay for a new single-use plastic bottle each time. With our products, when you run out of your cleaning solution or hand soap, you simply take one of our bottles, you fill it up with warm to hot water, and then you can just drop in one of our tablets. And at the end of a few minutes, you have a full bottle of cleaning solution or hand soap, for example. And the idea for Blueland actually came about when I became a new mom. And it was never really about cleaning products at all. The idea came about because I was starting to transition my son to baby formula. So I was a new mom and I was obsessive about trying to ensure that this baby formula I was making him was going to be as clean as possible. So I spent a lot of time researching baby formula as well as a lot of time researching what kind of water would be best to mix with his baby formula. And, at the time, frankly, I was actually open to is bottled water potentially cleaner than New York City tap water? And I was horrified to learn that regardless, whether you're drinking bottled water or tap water, that our drinking water generally here in the US contains on average over 100 pieces of microplastic per liter. And that just killed me. And that was the first time I started to connect the dots between all this plastic that we're consuming as a society and how it's entering our waterways and our oceans and breaking down into these tiny pieces of microplastic. And now it's showing back up in the food we eat, the water we drink, and the formula I was making my baby. And so at that point, I decided, really just as a consumer, I was going to cut back or really try to cut out as much single-use plastics as I could. And that was a really interesting journey because, as well-intentioned as I was, I realized that I just had no choice. Like, everything seemed to come packaged in single-use plastic. And that's when I realized that, with my background launching new companies, that I could have an impact far greater beyond just my own personal consumption if I could find a way to create products that gave people more and better choice. And so that's kind of how the idea for Blueland came about. I say that it was never really about cleaning to start with because in the beginning I was very open to starting in sort of a wide range of categories, and ended up testing a lot of different categories like toothpaste, shampoo, deodorant, and ultimately landed on cleaning products as the first set of products that we want to tackle.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And Bindu.
Thank you so much. So when I think about the mission of Impossible Foods, it's really around making our global food system truly sustainable. Meat has been around, an essential part of our diet forever. But when we're using animals to make meat as a prehistoric and destructive technology, animal agriculture occupies almost half the land on Earth. So when you think about the impact a company like Impossible Foods can make, it's really, really inspiring. We want to eradicate meat consumption. And so when you think about the mission and the passion that I have for looking at how inclusion, diversity, and equity can play a role in the mission, we look at different types of talent and we look at how we're able to move the needle forward by looking at diverse perspectives and diverse ways of thinking to really support our mission.
Really appreciate that. I wanted to turn now a little bit and talk about market disruption, because as we just heard, you're both disrupting an entire industry in favor of innovation and sustainability, right? In my experience, when I looked at the textile industry, there were so many powerful, large organizations who were still doing things the way my great-grandfather did in 1896, right? Like managing a supply chain with good old pen and paper, maybe if they were a little bit better by Excel spreadsheet. And that is why they have all this waste. But if you think about it, it also means that you have a lot of education to do right up front in order to get the old school way of doing things in these businesses to be forward thinking and innovative and to adopt technology and sustainability. So, Sarah, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about Blueland and how you took it from an idea and just this mission, right? That no one should have to sacrifice a clean home for a clean planet, and actually built it into execution, making and shipping eco-friendly products and solutions to your customers.
Yeah. So it was probably a good thing that I had no idea how long and difficult the journey ahead was going to be. Because in my mind, it was like, yeah, sure, why don't we just take these, cleaning sprays that are all this water and remove the water and make these dry tablets? Like, why not? And when we got started, there were certainly so many naysayers saying like, no, that can't be done, right? The fact that you have, sort of 7+ massive CPG companies that are doing $5 to $50 billion of revenue a year, and the fact that none of them are doing this, there must be a good reason. Either it's not possible or it's not going to be interesting to the consumer. But I think that's also the benefit of being mission driven, because ultimately there was this greater purpose, right? If it was just about, making money or about personal success, I think, there were sort of countless number of times I would have potentially folded. But I think ultimately, I really believe that this was truly a worthy expedition, because if I were able to do this, that it would be something that would benefit, my children, future generations, and again, the planet broadly. But yeah, when we got started, it wasn't clear where to start. Initially it's like, okay, we want to make these tablets. I'm not a chemist, so I didn't really know where to begin. So my co-founder is also not a chemist. And so we just started getting on the phone. We just started picking up the phone. Actually, started with Google and started just searching for cleaning products manufacturers and just started calling them, right? And they thought we were crazy. We thought it was very reasonable to call them and see, like, would you be able to make, these cleaning tablets and just not add the water? And, they started to give us the context of, look, all of the products we create are liquid. In fact, many of the ingredients that we get come to us as liquid. And we don't even have tablet machinery, much less know the first thing about making a dry tablet. And so at that point, after calling, close to 40 different manufacturers, we shifted gears and started calling on candy manufacturers, on vitamin supplement manufacturers, anyone at that point who owned tablet machinery and had experience working with dry format formulations. And almost in retrospect, to no surprise, they also thought we were crazy and said, like, we can't create this for you. You need to come to us with the formulation. You need to create the formula. And so at that point, my co-founder and I, again, not chemists, and quickly also realized we didn't really have chemists in our network. So we just simply turned to LinkedIn. We went on LinkedIn and we just started looking for chemists with, backgrounds that we thought were relevant, and try to get anyone and everyone who was willing to get on the phone with us to just ask them questions if they thought this was possible, if they would be willing to help us, if they had a friend that'd be willing to help us, if they knew of a manufacturer that could do this for us. And that's just kind of how the story went at the beginning. I think had we initially thought about, like, oh, we have this massive thing that we have to tackle, I think there's a large chance we would have just cowered in fear and said, like, no, there's no way we're going to scale this mountain. But every step of the way, we just thought about, okay, what's the next step, what's the next obstacle that we need to run through, and just throw ourselves at that wholeheartedly. And ultimately, we were able to recruit an incredible chemist off of LinkedIn. He was at the time, the director of formulation over at Method, which is one of the largest natural or non-toxic cleaning brands in the world. Prior to his time in the cleaning industry, he had actually been formulating nutritional supplements, so vitamins. So he had the dry format experience as well. And once we identified him, we just I would not let him go, right? He was based in San Francisco. We were based in New York City, and would just continue to make up a ton of excuses to go to San Francisco and be like, oh, we're in town, for something else, not for you. But just to find excuses to engage with him and to eventually, convince him to leave his big company and his big role to join us to try to create this product.
And you kind of touched on it, Sarah, but naturally along the way, I feel like, especially when you're innovating and doing something new and with market disruption, there are clearly going to be the early adopters who just get it and they come on board really early on, but there are going to be plenty of no's along the way, right? And the people who just don't get it. And when I first started looking at the issue of supply chain waste, we'd go and talk to the sustainability departments and the big brands and retailers, and it was just thought of as a nice to have, right? Not a have to have. And of course, the more we looked at this issue, the more we positioned it around, this isn't just about people and planet, but it's also about a business's profit, the economics, your ability to sell waste, make money, and improve your bottom and top line. And, fast forward to today, and these issues that we're all talking about here today in all these industries are a top, 3 priority, right, for every C-suite. So, based on the name Impossible Foods, Bindu, clearly I feel like your inspiration and part of what's behind this is about taking what seems impossible and making it possible. And I wonder if you could discuss in your experience, how you were able to take some of the no's that you were hearing, both in the business being created as well as in the community that you were talking to, and turn them into yeses and make that impossible possible. And especially when you do that, bringing equity, inclusion, diversity to it, because that is so critical to the conversation today more than ever.
No, absolutely. And, along those lines, I love what Sarah had mentioned, right? When you've got founders that don't have that scientific background, that's diversity of thought. You're looking to solve a problem from a very different perspective, and then you align with the talent that comes in to provide that level of expertise. So to look at your question around no, right? When you're thinking about eradicating meat consumption in such a global way, you're going to hear a lot of no, that's impossible. You can't even imagine that that could be a reality. And so what I like to think about is, what is behind the no? How do we understand what potential fears are? What are the potential concerns? And really understanding the why behind that. Why do we think that that's not a possibility? Why do we think that that is impossible? And so as we learn to explore more deeply around the no and the reasons behind that, that helps us to get a better sense of what we can convey and what narrative we can share around the importance of them. So I like to look at the talent around that, right? When we have diverse talent who can hear and understand what those no's mean, then we can think about how it plays out in one's own experience, one's own upbringing, one's professional background. So when you're trying to think about disrupting, the industry, you look at early career talent and their vision around what does saving the planet look like. And you look at Gen Xers and baby boomers, you want all those voices represented at the table to really share why that's an impact to how they live their day-to-day lives. You both mentioned you went into your respective industries as mothers with that outlook. So how important is it to have that voice represented at the table when we're looking to sustain change in such magnitude? I think the other part too is how do we develop that deeper understanding and empathy around what we're trying to do? We're all trying to be so disruptive in a way that can potentially scare how people identify what normal behavior, what normal eating patterns, what normal clothing patterns, what normal drinking patterns come into play. So when I think about ID&E, I think about it in 3 words. Where's the commitment, the leadership level commitment? How intentional are we being? And strategically, how are we aligned? Because at the end of the day, we are running a business. So how do we make sure that we're connecting our ID&E strategy to business goals and objectives? This is not a nice to have. This is a must have as we look at really being disruptive. When I think about people who have done things for the first time, the first person who climbed Mount Everest, it was a first. People had said, no, it may be impossible. But the reality is, when you fast forward, look at the number of people waiting in lines now to climb Mount Everest. So we really want to help and build that narrative around encouraging our consumers to think about what's possible.
That makes complete sense. And I think, one of the most valuable things we did at Queen of Raw to turn those no's into yeses was to create really strong partnerships and alliances, right, with incredibly powerful organizations. We work with the United Nations, with MIT, with SAP, among others, trying to make it easier for our community to trust us and to adopt our innovations. We actually went so far as working with government. We created the New York Circular City Initiative with H&M and the New York City government and showed how many good jobs can be created and how much money can be saved and made by New York City going circular in the coming years. So Sarah, I wonder if you could touch a little bit on, in your experience, how you collaborated with really powerful thinkers globally to advance this mission and this big, bold vision.
Absolutely. So, similarly, we at Blueland are just huge believers in developing, strong collaborations and partnerships, especially as it relates to our mission and our commitments to the planet. One group that we partnered with since the very beginning was Cradle to Cradle, which is the world's most comprehensive, product assessment and certification program. Cradle to Cradle truly invented this concept of designing for abundance and circularity in direct opposition to Cradle to Grave. And, it was an org that I've respected for so long. Bill McDonough's book, Upcycle, I've also had read and was such a huge fan of. And so they were, an obvious partner for us to work on everything, from our bottles to our cleaning chemistries to our refill wrappers. And, the main reason that we want to do this, because it wasn't like we needed someone else to sort of help check the box for intention. It certainly wasn't meant to be outward facing or for just marketing purposes to have all these certifications, but rather, my co-founder and I wanted to make sure that we weren't so singularly focused on our mission, for example, to eliminate single-use plastic packaging, that we were doing something else in some other part of our supply chain where we were doing a disservice to the planet, whether was on carbon emissions or on water use. And we truly did not believe that we could have the excuse of like, oh, we just didn't know. Here we were with this incredibly unique opportunity to build this company from the ground up and do things like really as cleanly and sort of as right as we possibly could. And we really did not take that responsibility lightly, because we look around and we understand why existing companies, some of these CPG companies have been around for almost 200 years. So it's really hard for companies of that size and that scale to be able to completely reorient and reinvent their operations and supply chain to put the planet first. And so I wanted to make sure that we were really fully taking advantage of the unique opportunity we had. So, with Cradle to Cradle, through that partnership, we've had all of our chemistries and our bottles, the manufacturing and sourcing practices audited and certified for material health, material reutilization, energy management, water stewardship, and social fairness. We also work with partners such as the EPA Safer Choice Program, EWG, Leaping Bunny, and the USDA to screen all of our ingredients for both their human and environmental health impact. And, we really consider ourselves so fortunate to have these incredible organizations in place who have done such extensive work over the course of decades that we can leverage and build on instead of starting from scratch.
That's just fantastic. And you kind of started touching on it, but looking at all the trends that are going on in the world right now, right? Sustainability, I feel like, has become increasingly valuable to all of these businesses around the world, because it is not only good for people and planet, but we talked a little about it. There's this economic incentive and advantage, right? I mean, in the fashion industry, we're seeing the movement around the Real and ThredUp, right? Going public, and how much money can be made by selling waste, right? And buying waste at a discount. One of our enterprise customers actually saved 15% of their bottom line in just 1 year, just by adopting these kinds of solutions, while also increasing their top line because consumer preferences are changing, right? So Bindu, I wonder if you could talk about, when it comes to plant-based meats, what are you seeing in consumer preferences and demands changing, and what critical insights can all business leaders take away to build for the future?
Absolutely. And I think specifically to Impossible, customers don't want to sacrifice taste. So when you think about our focus on nutritional value, taste, and the ability to scale, you think about how that aligns not only, again, with what the business needs in order to serve its mission, but how do you bring the customers along with the journey? We want to create a product, like any company wants to create a product that's superior, compelling, and can outperform on many levels. How do we think about challenging our consumers to try things that they never thought about before? When we look historically, we think about, moving from the Pony Express to the car, or even the rotary phone to smartphones. There's an arc of progress here that we really want to create that narrative around to share with our customers, get them engaged, get them excited, let them recognize that it aligns with their vision and their mission in terms of how they want to contribute to society in a shape or form. And then really looking at the future of food. Where are we and what are we doing? There's so much food technology that's coming out and surfacing now because there's a true need. And so inspiring consumers to be part of that journey and addressing their motivations, that it's far bigger than just the burger. It's the impact that we want to make, and that each and every person has the opportunity to be part of that journey becomes really important.
Yeah, you're right. And I think looking at everything going on in the world right now, clearly, if any good can come out of it, it is this awareness for the consumers and for businesses alike, right? To see the opportunity to build for that sustainable future that we all want. You know, at Queen of Raw, we are here focused on what does the future supply chain look like, right? One that is more on demand, more local, and more sustainable. And ultimately, we hope we write ourselves out of a marketplace business because we have solved the issue of waste and inefficiency. And then, right, we'll help businesses not only survive today, but intelligently minimize waste and thrive tomorrow. So in closing, I kind of wonder if you could each briefly, starting with Sarah and then Bindu, talk about where you're putting your energy next. What are you thinking about in the future, and what kind of takeaways we as individuals can have and take action and build for that future?
Yeah, it's a good question. For us, I think, there's been a lot of focus on how do we take a lot of the learnings from this past year. I think, it was certainly a year of growth in a lot of respects, not just from a business perspective, where certainly businesses have been through a ton, right? Whether it was high growth or quite the opposite, and have had to develop a level of organizational resilience and capabilities, but also on the personal side. It's been an interesting time over the past year because, the lines between work and personal life have never blurred quite like they have before. And I think we all have individually been through so much and have developed, personally so much resilience and grit, as well as sort of a renewed outlook on our relationship with work, renewed outlook on the world, right? And social justice and the environment and health. And, how do we really take all of that, which has made us all so much stronger foundationally, and now sort of grow from here. Again, I think we spent so much of 2020 just trying to gain our footing and kind of orient ourselves. And now I think, really looking forward to this year and beyond, and to really, scale and, really truly build and soar from that foundation.
Bindu, I wonder in closing, if you can just share with the audience where you're putting your energy next, and any kind of practical takeaways that we as individuals can take to take action and to participate in your solution.
Now, absolutely. A lot of our energies are focused around our execution of our ID&E strategy. What are we doing as we look at attracting, retaining, and developing our talent? And the importance around bringing that into our mission is a huge piece of that. I think the other part to be clear about is the importance of having diversity of thought on teams and trying to make products that appeal to different expectations, desires, and ways of engaging with food and culture. So I think the ask at the end of that is really think about what you're being intentional about, not only from the inclusion, diversity, and equity space, but also how that has much larger, greater impact in our ecosystem.
And ultimately, hopefully everyone feels empowered that they can take action and go build businesses and go change the world. Thank you so much.
Up next is our interactive hour. Visit the Schedule tab to take advantage of these live networking opportunities. Sessions include meeting with exhibitors in their booths, joining a topic-based networking room, or attending a Q&A session with a seminar speaker. Even if you'd like a more one-on-one networking experience, head to the People tab, filter the attendee network by interests, and request to meet. Be sure to also visit the Chevron booth, where you can learn more about Chevron and open opportunities. And lastly now, we'd like to thank our incredible sponsors. We'll see you at 4:15 for our Zoom Ready workshop, followed by a fun change-up, your cocktails mixology class to close out our day. We'll see you soon.